أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. If you guys remember, yesterday we were talking about the topic of Adl, and Adl is one of the attributes of Allah, and one of His names is He is the one who is Adl. And Adl is so important that it makes up one of the pillars of our faith, the pillars of our religion. Meaning that if this one goes down, everything else goes down. And in order to be a Muslim who is a believer in the Shia school of thought, you have to believe in Adl as well too. And yesterday we talked about how Adl means to put everything in its proper place, to do things according to how people deserve and how they need. And it doesn't necessarily mean doing things equally, because sometimes if you do things equally, you end up actually doing injustice. You don't end up doing justice. Now, the dialogue that you guys had read at the end of yesterday had to do with a common argument that's made by people who don't want to believe in God. You can convince them about the existence of God, because otherwise they don't have an answer for how is it that everything came to be. But then what they say is, they say, well, this God is unjust. Why is he unjust? Because there's evil in this world. And they say that, okay, well, the argument is a bit more sophisticated. They say that, okay, well, either this God doesn't know about the evil that takes place, or he knows about it and he's not capable of doing anything about it, or he knows about it and he's capable of doing something about it, but he still wants it to happen. And then they say that, okay, well, the God that we have proven, and we went through the proofs in the previous lessons, that God is a God who's perfect. And so he does know about everything and he is capable of everything. That means that this God actually wants this evil to be happening and he doesn't do anything to stop it. You have innocent people being killed, you have people who are good people and bad things happen to them, you have people who are suffering, so many diseases and war and all these things. How can God let this happen? And so then that leads them to the conclusion, well, the God that we're talking about is not a just God, and therefore I can't accept him. So this is a super important issue. We have to know how to respond to this. And there is a response. So the response is that it's true that Allah knows about this evil that's happening in this world. He is capable of doing something to stop it. He still allows it to happen, but he is still just and he's still fair, and that's because there is a reason behind the existence of this evil. And if we understand the reason and reasons behind why this evil actually exists, that's when it become clear to us that Allah is allowing this evil to happen for a purpose, and he's still being fair. He still is doing things in a just and a fair sort of way. So what are these reasons? This is where we're going to go through the reasons from your handout. So the reason number one is that we make our judgments based on incomplete knowledge and relative knowledge. Okay, no, incomplete and relative. No, incomplete meaning that, okay, we can't see everything, right? Like we're limited in terms of what we know. Right now, for example, like wherever you're sitting, you can see, some of the people in your classroom. You can see what's happening in the classroom, but you can't really see what's happening in other classrooms, can you? You can't see into people's minds and understand what they're thinking. If you hear, let's say you hear like a loud thud from somewhere in the school. Because your knowledge is incomplete, there was a thud, but there could be a lot of different things that caused the thud. Okay, that's incomplete knowledge. It's also relative knowledge in the sense that we're bound by a certain time and a certain place. We can't see the whole picture of the things, the grand scheme of things. This is the type of knowledge that we have. Even if you have technology, let's say that you're connected to like some satellite, and that satellite gives you like a big picture of the Earth. Still, you don't know what's going on like inside of people, inside of different cells. You don't know what's going on inside the ocean. You don't know what's going on in people's hearts or people's minds, right? So our knowledge is very limited. Now, because of our limited knowledge, sometimes we make a a judgment on something, and we say that something is bad or it's evil, and the reality is that it's actually something which overall is good. Yes, there might be some evil, but it's limited, it's contained, and overall it's still a good thing. Um, I'll give you an example. It might be the case that for people who are affected by an earthquake, that earthquake is seen as a very evil sort of thing. It's like they lose their homes, they lose their lives, they get injured, they lose their life savings. Okay, so it's evil from that perspective. Okay, but if you look at the overall system of the creation of God, earthquakes are really important. They release energy, and if it wasn't released in that sort of way, then there would be a lot of energy that was built up, and then would cause even more of a catastrophe. Earthquakes probably also lead to different developments, like when it comes to creating new formations and allowing for certain elements to be gotten from the core of the earth, and many other things. Maybe some of them we don't even understand yet. So depending on where you look at it, from the overall system perspective, having an earthquake is something which is a wonderful way that God has built in order to allow for the movement of tectonic plates underneath the Earth's surface. But yes, for the people who are living there, from their perspective, it's a very difficult thing to bear with. There are many examples of that. If you take, for example, let's say it's raining. Okay, well, rain, is that good or is it bad? For some people, it's something which is bad. Like, for example, let's say you have somebody like a potter who's making pottery from clay. This is a famous example that's given. And okay, he needs or she needs to have dry clay in order to make that. The pots, well, if it rains, okay, not good. But for a farmer who's waiting for that rain, okay, good. That same rain, if there's too much of it for the farmer, it's something which is bad, right? Or let's say that like, they're saying right now that like, okay, that it's spring came early, but there might be a freeze that comes up, very soon, and normally, like, spring is a time for happiness, and spring weather is a time for happiness for farmers. But in this case, where it's going to be followed by a freeze, it's not so good because then the crops would grow and then they would die. So we have a lot of other examples of that. Let's say that, like, human saliva, that's something which is super useful for somebody. Without that, like, they wouldn't be able to talk, they wouldn't be able to eat, but it can be a nuisance for other people. The story of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, and the old man and the child and the thief. So what this is, the story goes like this: that one time Nabi Musa alayhi salam asks Allah to show him, like, how is it that he operates according to justice. So he tells him, okay, go and observe what happens near this pond. So he goes there, and it's a place where different people stop to get water. So he sees that there's a man who comes along, and he has, a bag of coins. So he wants to go get some water. So before he drinks water, he puts the bag of coins on the side, and then he goes and drinks the water, and then he forgets about the bag of coins. He goes away. Now there's an old man that comes along, and there's a child that comes along, and the child sees the bag, and this looks interesting, snatches the bag and goes away with it. Then there's an old man that comes along, and he's drinking water, and at this time the man who initially had that bag of coins, he comes back because now he realized that he left it there. And he sees the old man there, he questions him, he says, what do you do with my money, man? Old man says, I haven't seen your money, I don't know what you're talking about. And this man then proceeds to kill him. Now Nabi Musa alayhi salam, he asks Allah, can you explain to me what was it that just happened here? So he says to him that that man who had the bag of coins actually had stolen some money from the father of that child when the father was alive. And now the child had died, the child was an orphan. So this was Allah's way of restoring that money back to the child. And this same man, his father had been killed by that old man unjustly, a long time ago. And now this was Allah's way of taking revenge on the old man for what he had done. So from the perspective of Nabi Musa, he might say that, okay, or just anybody else who doesn't have the inside information, they would say that, oh, this is terrible, the money is being taken unjustly, the man is being killed unjustly. And according to the rules of the Sharia, some of these acts wouldn't be acceptable. But Allah has His own plan. This is the way that He does things. This is the way that He works. And sometimes things happen, and they happen for a reason. Okay, now I know you might be asking questions like, well, was it okay for the child to take the money? Was it okay for that man to kill him? Obviously not. But the point is that this is just a way to show how God does things, and He knows what's going to happen. Okay, you might have some more questions about that. Inshallah, we can discuss that on Friday if Allah gives us the tawfiq to do so. Okay, so the point is that there's evil that happens, and sometimes we don't understand why. It's because we're looking at it from a relative perspective. Another reason is because another question that comes up is, why is it that Allah allows shaitan to exist? Well, shaitan is bad and evil for the people who listen to him. But for those who are able to resist his temptation, and they're able to prove that they worship Allah, that Allah is their ilah, Allah is their Rabb, they don't listen to shaitan. For them, shaitan has been a source of goodness because he allowed them to spiritually excel. He allowed them to show that yes, they are believers, right? Practically, they've demonstrated that. So it's relative. Okay, shaitan is bad for them, but he's good in the whole system of God's creation as a way of testing the creation of God, and that's why we're here to be tested. So that's reason number one, which has to do with our knowledge being relative and limited. Now, the second reason is that when somebody faces difficulties in life, that difficulty and that challenge helps them to be humble, to not be so arrogant. If all we faced in our life was a good thing after the other thing, a good thing after the other thing, right? Everything was smooth sailing, right? Whatever you wanted, you got. Then basically, you can very easily get to the point where you're like, hey, I don't even need Allah anymore, right? I'm my own master. Everything I want, I get anyway. So what's the point? The Quran says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, innal insana la yatgha ar-ra'ahu istaghna." Human beings, they rebel. When do they rebel? When they see themselves as independent of God. So sometimes God does things to make us remember that we are dependent on Him. We need Him. Things don't go how we want and how we plan all the time. It goes according to God's plan, and we have to be okay with that. So when you especially in the modern world where you can get anything that you want at any time, it's like, okay, well, why do I need God anymore? So that's why sometimes these difficult things happen to us. And this is something which you see all the time. We have people who the only time they will open up the Quran, or the only time they'll actually pay attention in their prayers, the only time they care about not doing haram is when they're reminded that, hey, it's not just about this world, you're going to die one day. Or it's when they really feel like, okay, they need the help of God. Otherwise, it's like whatever, like we don't really care. Okay, the third reason is that difficult situations, they can unlock hidden potential. There's only when you're not challenged, there's only so much that you will give, right? But when you're put in a challenging situation, that's when you want to rise to the occasion. You have to rise to the occasion. And we've been put on this earth to achieve perfection, right? We want to always be becoming better and better and better. Now, how do we get there unless we're given challenges, right? So this applies to both worldly achievement and also spiritual achievement. Even with non-Muslims, right? I mean, it's a universal rule that when you're put in a difficult situation, you can rise to the occasion. Many famous people became famous after being put in a difficult situation. For example, Charles Dickens, he's one of the most famous figures in English literature of all times. He used to work in a boot factory, providing for his family, and he lived in poverty, his very difficult life. But it was through those difficult times that he, got a certain perspective on things, and he developed that sense of being an artist and wanting to express himself through the written word. Um, Now, on a spiritual sense, the same concept applies, that by facing difficulties and tests, that's how we can raise our level of servitude to Allah. We can become more patient. We can become better at controlling our anger. We can become more humble. We can become more generous, right? We can become more being a source of comfort to others when others are afflicted with difficulty and we have to support them. If you look at the life of our Prophet and the Imams, they faced so many difficulties, so many challenges. But these difficulties and challenges, right, even though many of them were caused by like dhulm of the people, it also allowed them to be raised to the highest of levels in terms of like, no one else has faced such things and been able to have such incredible akhlaq and such incredible servitude to Allah, not lose hope, always persevere, and remain strong until the very end. The fourth reason for the existence of evil is that difficult situations provide opportunity for special spiritual growth. That's what we talked about already, actually. So that one you could combine with the previous one. There's an example that's mentioned in your notes of this individual. His name was Hashim al-Haddad. He was an ironsmith. He was also a very pure person who was trying to develop himself spiritually. So the story goes that he had a teacher, Sayyid Qadi Tabai, who was Allama Tabataba'i's teacher, Ayatollah Bahjat's teacher, who told him that he complained to him one day. He said that my mother-in-law really bothers me. So his teacher told him just to be patient, don't lash out at her. So he's working on himself. He's trying to get closer to Allah, and then his mother-in-law is very abusive. So one day she just lashes out, and she just tells him all these things, swears at him, all these things, right? But he holds the anger, right? He's patient, and he decides to just leave the home and take a walk. So when he leaves the home, takes a walk, and then that spiritual goal that he was trying to accomplish, like the special state of being close to Allah, he's able to achieve that goal because of facing this challenge. Another reason is that difficulties provide variety in life and make life interesting. If everything was just like a walk in the park, then we wouldn't have stories to tell our kids, right, when we go old, right, or grandkids, right? We wouldn't be able to appreciate the good parts of life, right? If you don't have challenges, then you can't appreciate when things are better. Like one of the most amazing feelings is when Allah removes like a test for us. He helps solve it for us, right? Then you feel this incredible rush of gratitude, right? But if everything was just blessing after blessing, then we would forget to be able to acknowledge the blessings that Allah gives us. And number 6 is that sometimes we create evil and difficulties for ourselves, meaning that Allah has created this system of cause and effects. If you do something, there are certain effects that are going to happen. And we can't expect that Allah is going to not make something happen just because it's something which is bad for us, even though it's our own mistake. So for example, let's say that I'm busy texting on my phone, right? So I walk out in a busy intersection, I don't look up to see the cars rushing at me, and then I, God forbid, get hit by the car. Okay, well, whose fault is that? Was it Allah who's done evil, right? Is he supposed to make a special exception for me and say that, okay, in this case, when a human being walks out in the street with the phone, not paying attention, then the car should automatically, magically stop? That's not how. We shouldn't have that type of demand or expectation that, we're so special that all the laws of nature have to revolve around us. No, if we make a mistake, we have to face the consequences. If people build buildings and they don't follow the laws for building them with a strong foundation, and then there's an earthquake and all the buildings collapse, which they do, and they have, then are we supposed to now take God to court and sue him for that? No, it's the people's faults, right? Or, for example, if there's people who are suffering so much in this world, people in Yemen, children are starving to death. Is that God's fault, or is it the fault of these people who allow them to be oppressed, and these governments who send weapons to Saudi Arabia to go and attack the Yemeni people? These are caused by the people, right? That it's because of their dhulm, and Allah gives them the free will. After all, Allah gives people free will for a reason, which is that they want to be tested, right? So He can't, whenever somebody whenever somebody wants to make a wrong decision, he can't just withdraw that free will from them and say that, hey, you can't actually make this decision. No, they're able to make that decision because that's part of God's plan, and then they're responsible for those actions. And we can't blame Allah for them. So these are six very important reasons that we've talked about that help us understand why is it that there is evil in this world, and how it doesn't mean that God is unjust. There's reasons behind this evil. Allah permits it to happen, but for a reason. Sometimes there's goodness there that we can't see. Sometimes it's because of the people themselves making their own decisions, right? Sometimes it's because He wants to test us. But the point is that we can't just interpret anything bad and say that, okay, that thing is evil, so therefore God is unjust, and therefore I don't want to believe in God. No, we can't be so naive. We have to understand it in a deeper sort of way. And the more we analyze things, sometimes it takes time to understand things, but then we realize, what is the actual wisdom of God behind that thing. And Allah, this is the way He works in this universe, right? Everything is under a very immensely complex control, and Allah is He's watchful over everything. Everything He does is for a reason. For a believer, they have to expect of God that He won't do anything with them except for that which is in their best interest, and that's the way Allah does things. If we try our hardest, we have taqwa, we do our responsibility, and Allah will do whatever's in our best interest, even if it's something that's a test for us, something that we might otherwise think of as evil. It's still something which is okay and good for us. Inshallah, you'll be now getting a chance to review these reasons and to prepare them and present them in the form of a debate, which inshallah your teacher will be explaining to you in more detail. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.